So I'm going to resume that and get started here. Just 1 second. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm glad you could join me today. My name is Susan Falk. We are talking today about living on a college budget, and I'm hoping that everyone can get something out of this. I think I'll have some new things that maybe you haven't heard before. And like I say, if you do have questions during the time that I'm talking, just pop it into chat or wait till the end and you can answer your questions then. I would like to know who all is here. So if you can look in the poll that should have just appeared on your screen and let me know who you are and where you're from. That will help me as I'm talking to make sure that I can give everyone on here the right kind of information. Awesome, thanks. Give you a few more seconds to answer that. Looks like everyone has answered. Great. So awesome. We have college students and college staff on here, which makes sense since we're talking about living on a college budget. So let me introduce myself and we'll get started. My name is Susan Falk. I'm an outreach specialist for Oklahoma Money Matters. We are a team with the Oklahoma College Assistance Program. The Oklahoma College Assistance Program helps families plan, prepare, and pay for college. We're a division of the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education. I know that's a mouthful, but that's our group and what we do. If you have any questions, I have my email up here that you don't want to ask during the presentation, or if afterward you think of something you want to talk about with me, I have my email there. So just send me an email and I'll be happy to talk with you. As I said, we are recording this, so if you can add your questions in chat, that would be really helpful. Today, we're going to talk about building a budget, getting through college on less, and final tips and takeaways. These are things that don't really fit in my other categories, but we've been doing a presentation on paying for college this last year, and through that time, people have come from the audience, and I've done my own research and found some extra things that might be helpful, especially if you're a college student or a college staff who are working with students who are trying to get through college. And as we go through this, there's going to be some things that you've heard before that you don't have questions about. There's going to be new things you've never heard about. And then there will be things that you forget about till somebody mentions it later and you'll say, oh gosh, I remember that lady talking about that before. And take what you need, use what you need. And then if you have questions later, we'll also have I'll be sending this presentation out to everyone, and there will be links at the end for everything I'm talking about. If I say there's a link in this presentation, I'll give it to you afterward. And so if you have questions later, you'll also get the email from me, and feel free to send me any questions that you have. So let's get started. Alrighty, so first we're going to talk about building a budget or a spending plan. One of the things that I know a lot of high school students, especially if you've just graduated, you haven't budgeted before. You haven't had a job maybe, or a lot of money coming in, and so you didn't have to budget. But one of the things that I can tell you that college students do have to do is manage their money. You have to watch your money. You have to know where it's going. And I can tell you, my sister and I do a presentation about paying for college, as I said before. And one of the things she says, she's been a high school and college counselor for a long time, is that most college students are poor. but they are all poured together and it's kind of fun. So one of the things that I mentioned to high school and college students is that you're probably not going to have enough money in college. So, or it's going to seem like you don't have enough money. So one of the most important things you can do is start to learn how to manage your money, watch what you're spending, and make sure that you're reaching your goals, that you make it through college. One of the things we've learned these last few years is that students who do have to drop out of college, the majority of the time it's because of money. And that's one thing we don't want to happen. We want you to feel secure that you know what money you have coming in, what money you have going out, and that you can manage it and make sure that you have enough at the end of each month and can continue with your studies. So the first thing you want to do is track your income. Right now, if you're a high school student, you probably don't have a lot of money coming in, but you probably will once you start college. The majority of students who are in college have to work. I think it's like 72% or something like that of college students work. So if you don't have a job now, you probably will have one when you're in college. That could be a part-time job. It could be, you might have money coming in from student loan proceeds. If you get student loans, you might have a side hustle, or your family might give you money. And what you want to do is write all of that down. Start making a list of what money you have coming in and when it's coming in so that you know that total amount. That's the first thing you have to do. You have to know how much money you have to work with. And that's a fairly simple thing to do. I'll talk a little bit in a minute about how to do that, some ways that make it a little bit easier, but that's the first step. Track your income, know what money you have coming in. The second thing you want to do is figure out your financial responsibilities. What money are you going to owe every month? If you're a new college student or a current college student, knowing what your responsibilities are and that everything gets paid in full and on time is key to starting out right with your financial, I call it your financial character or your financial background and credit, is making sure that your financial responsibilities are taken care of. This is a very important step. And once you start college, you might have expenses you never had before. You might have rent. Your parents might expect you to pay your own cell phone bill now. You may have gotten a car, so you may have a car loan. And you'll also have expenses that change every month. They're called variable expenses. Your electric bill, if you are renting a place, gas for your car, groceries if you're not eating at the college. So there will be expenses that you maybe haven't had in the past. Listing all those and knowing what they are and when they're due is the second step and one of the most important steps that you can do so that you know what money you have coming in and what money you have going out. So step number 3 is you want to track your spending. Of all the steps of budgeting, this is the one that people don't like the most and usually don't do. But it is very eye-opening when you do this, especially once you get a job and you start living as a college student on campus, knowing where your money's going, including even small purchases like Sonic drinks or 7-Eleven burritos. I do a activity with different groups where they write down all the money they've spent for a week or two, and they put beside that list, each item they put, is this a planned expense or an unplanned expense? And they add those two lists together. And I haven't had a single person yet who had a bigger planned expense list than unplanned. And that's the opposite of budgeting. You want to know where all of your money is going to go, because like I said, as a college student, you're probably not going to have enough all the time, or you're going to feel like you don't have enough. So you need to know where every penny is going. The only way to do that is to write it down every time you spend $1. Every time you spend any money at all, you have to track it and write it down. You can do that on pencil and paper. You can get the spreadsheet open on your phone. You can use an app, which we'll talk about later. And it's a good idea to track your expenses for 90 days. If you do it for 30 days, that's even better. And that really hones in on those variable expenses. Like, gas might be a little more one month than the next month, but if you do it for 90 days, you can average those out and you have a better idea of what those variable expenses are going to be each month. So if you can do that, that would go a long way in helping you get your budget nailed down. Otherwise, you're going to be surprised and not be able to balance your budget every month. It's going to look different each month. So getting a good average is always helpful. The next thing you want to do after you've seen what money you have coming in, what money's going out, you've tracked your expenses, you know how much you're spending and what you're spending your money on, is to create spending categories. Most people are going to have fairly similar categories. You're going to have a travel budget or transportation, either gas. You're going to have a food budget. Most people have similar ones, but you might have a category or two that are different than everybody else's. I have an art category in my budget. I started watercolor painting about a year ago, and good paper is expensive and I like good paper. So I had to set a budget for it because I found myself spending too much on that. And you might have other categories. If you're an athlete, an artist, a photographer, something like that, you might have categories that other people don't have. When you're going through the process of budgeting, so you've got your money coming in, know how much money is going out, you track your spending, you have your categories, you need to find a way to put it all together and use a tool that helps you see all of it in front of you so that you can check it all the time and know where your money's going, how much you have left to spend. And you can do that in several ways. You can use an app, which we'll talk about in a minute, pen and paper. You can use a spreadsheet. We'll talk about envelopes. If you're not familiar with what envelopes are, we'll go over that too. And some of you may already be using some of these tools, and that's great. If not, I have some tips for you. A lot of people use spreadsheets. This is an Excel template. If you go into Excel and you open new and look at templates and put in budget template, they'll have lots to choose from. This is a basic monthly budget, and it automatically adds things up. The template already makes some things easier for you because you don't have to manually do things, and it already has some categories. You can change these, you can make it your own, but it gives you a good running total of what's coming in, what's going out, how much money you have left, and what things look like at the end of the month. And I know lots of people who use Excel templates. I personally like those better than apps. I don't know why, but I do. We also have on the OKMM website, which I'll have a link at the end on that links page that I told you about, we have a budget calculator. And it's you can look at your final budget and you can download it and print it out if you want to as an Excel spreadsheet. But it already has some categories in here. You can add your net income, the money you have coming in every month there at the top, and you can put in the amounts that you have for each area, and it will give you a balance at the end. What do I have left at the end of the month? And you can do this as an ongoing basis too. A lot of people use cash envelopes. I don't know if you've heard of cash envelopes, but it is a way to categorize your money coming in into categories that you put cash into envelopes. So in this template that you see over here, we have on our website, I have that on that links list at the end also. You can print these out or just use regular envelopes. You don't have to use ours. Then you'll label each envelope with the categories that you put on before when you put your expenditures, the money going out into categories. You'll put how much money you have budgeted for that item inside the envelope. So for instance, if you have $150 budgeted every month for gas, that's how much you know that you're going to spend. You'll put that much money in that envelope. When you buy gas, you'll pay for that gas out of that envelope. And then once the cash in that envelope's gone, there's no more money for gas until the end of the month, unless you take it out of another envelope. Maybe you have to have gas, and maybe you had a category for clothing or entertainment. Maybe you have to take money out of there for gas because that's more important. Either way, once the money in the envelopes is gone, it's gone. And a lot of people who have trouble budgeting, who tend to overspend, this is an excellent way for them to manage their money. My daughter was one of these. She had a really tough time, and her husband both started using envelopes as their budgeting system so that she didn't overspend. And then now once she got used to that, she started using an app, and it makes it a little easier when you don't have to have cash for everything. But it's a really nice way if you have never budgeted before or if you have problems overspending. You can also use apps, two that we talk about. They're not the only two. There's many, many out there. There's many good ones. But two examples are one called Every Dollar. That's from Dave Ramsey. He's a money management guru, and he has his own app. There is a free version of this, and I've looked at it several times, and what is free is enough for most people. I can't imagine most people needing more and paying for the extra things he has on that app. There's also one called Good Budget, and it works like an envelope system. So you can see at the top there, it says monthly envelopes. It puts money into the categories, and that's how you watch your spending. It'll go down each time. It tells you how much money you have left in each of those categories. And I really like this one. I think if I was ever going to use an app, I'd use this one. And it's also, the free version is enough for almost anybody. I like this one. You can see the red mark. This example had already overspent on entertainment. So those are all ways that you can use to go through that process of budgeting, go through the steps and keep track of what you're spending, making sure that you're meeting your savings goals, that you're not overspending, and that you're going to make it till the end of the month. So budgeting. Another way that you can categorize, or a way that will help you categorize and knowing how much to put in those envelopes or how much to spend, put in each category. How much money should I usually budget for this? How much money should I usually budget for that? There's several ways you can do it. One is called the 50-30-20% spending plan, and that's when you use 50% of the money you have coming in for the must-have expenses, things that you have to live. Most people, for the rest of their life, and I tell college and high school students this too, 50% of everything you make, almost always, or a little bit more, and probably for the rest of your life, unless the economy changes crazily, is going to go for must-have expenses, just living. Half of everything that you make from now on is going to go for must-have expenses, somewhere to live, transportation, electricity, water, food to eat, and basic clothing. So you can start right there. That's a good place to start. You know how much money you have coming in. You know half of that is going to be just for living. That's a good place to start. 30% is for flexible expenses, and most people do this. Usually if people are going to overspend, it's with the flexible expenses, with dining out, entertainment. You saw on that last slide where somebody had already overspent on entertainment. And that's where about 30% of most people's budget will go to that, or should go to that. And the last 20% is for savings. That percentage fluctuates according to what group you're looking at. This 50-30-20 spending plan came from, I'll think of her name in a minute. She's a senator. She recommended 20% on savings. Some people say 10, so 10 to 20% you should save, and that's no matter how much money you make. You should always take that 10 to 20% off the top and forget it was ever there and save it. And we'll talk a little bit about savings and why you need that savings. So that's called the 50-30-20 spending plan. Then some people use a zero-based budget. That means every dollar is spoken for. So if you make $4,000, $2,000, $500 a month, you know where every dollar of that's going to go. And hopefully at the end of the month, it equals zero. You had $500 to spend, and $500 is how much you spent, and you knew where every penny of that went. That's called a zero-based budget. You budgeted for every dollar. There's other ways to budget. These are just two examples. A lot of people use these two, one of these two. So savings, one of the most important things that college staff can tell students, and one of the things I tell high school students who are going into college and college students that I talk to, that I'm going to say the most important thing you can do is save your money. One of the first things you want to start is an emergency fund. I tell high school students this a lot. If they're working in the summer, if they're working during the school year and they're going to school next year, is to save as much money as they possibly can. First for emergencies, and then for short, medium, and long-term goals. The reason I've started putting so much focus on that is because we've learned in the last few years, like I said at the beginning, that one of the primary reasons students have to leave school and drop out is because of money. And a lot of times it's an emergency. Their car broke down, their roommate moved out, they had expenses they weren't expecting, they got sick, their family or anyone was not able to help them, and they simply didn't have enough money to stay in college. And I tell students, please don't let this be you. Save as much money as you can before you get to college and while you're there, and have money in your pocket. So if something bad happens, an emergency happens, it doesn't ruin your college career or your budget. You say, oh man, that's a bummer, but I have money to take care of that. Having that extra money in your pocket is a comfort, and it gives you confidence that you can handle anything that comes your way. You're ready to take care of it. You know that you can take care of it, and you can continue on with your college education. There are, as you go into adulthood, short-term, medium, and long-term goals. You'll hear that a lot, and those are savings buckets, and you can either put those into different accounts or just know that have a list on your app or in your Excel spreadsheet that this is what you're saving for and this is how much you need to save. If your short-term things are for things that for 3 months up to a year, things that you need to save for, new sneakers to redecorate your room, etc. Medium savings goals are bigger purchases, maybe a vacation you want to take on spring break, and long-term is for paying for college, buying a car that maybe you're going to need that second or third year in college, etc. And each of those, you'll set a goal, deposit that before you ever see your paycheck, and know that you save first. That's called paying yourself first. When you save money first and don't and pretend that money was never there for you to spend. And that's one of the my number one tip to give high school and college students is to save, save, save. And I'll mention that again later. You'll get tired of hearing it. So one of the things, the title of this is getting through college on less, or budgeting. I mean, not spending as much as you are probably used to spending once you get into college. And let's go through a little bit of those things. A lot of these are common sense things you may have done before. A lot of families right now are having a hard time economically. They've had to tighten their belt. The economy is not great. Things are costing more. So you've done a lot of these things already. But there are specific things you can do in college that you may not know can save you money. One of the things that I talk about all the time when I talk about paying for college is consider living at home. If you do your budget now, you say, man, I need to figure out, do I have enough money when I get to college in a month or two? And you do a budget and you say, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have enough. Maybe one of the things you need to do is consider living at home and going to a community college or college that's closer first. That saves so much money. Another thing you want to do is to consider the location. If you're going to live off campus while you're at college, you might want to consider living farther away from college, from the college campus, because those rents are sometimes lower. So consider that. And if you are living off campus, most students get a roommate. That's not uncommon. That's something that a lot of students do. And just make sure that you plan for the emergencies when you do that. If your roommate moves out and you're left holding the bag for the rent for that person, make sure that you have your emergency savings. But that's very common. All three of my children had roommates when they were in college, because it does save a lot of money. Transportation, you'll find out when you go to college that you'll either live close enough to walk to all your classes, you can ride a bicycle, you might have to carpool if you're living off campus. That just makes sense. Public transportation, using buses. A lot of bigger college campuses will have buses that will take you. You'll park off campus and the bus will take you to campus. And one of the things you want to do is be strategic. Transportation these days is a big budget item. Save as much as you can on it when possible. Think about, how can I do this in the most efficient way? Maybe you can schedule all your classes to be in the morning and your roommate does the same thing so that you can ride together. Or you schedule all yours in the morning so you only have to drive once. You don't have to go back home during the middle of the day. And consider cost-friendly vehicles, of course, things that get you better gas mileage, or bicycles, etc. Because it is a big expense and something you should think about now as you're budgeting for being in college right now. Think about how much it's going to cost you to get to campus. My twin, whenever we're talking about this, she says her daughter at OU, you pay a transportation fee, a parking fee, to be on the OU campus, and then she would drive there to get to the public transportation, the bus, and there would be no parking there either. So think about it, be strategic, talk to other people, know what's going to happen when you get there so that you can plan for it and budget for it. Food, if you're a student who has to live on campus, that's part of what the college requires. If you're a freshman, or if you're already in college, you're in your second or third year, look at the meal plans that the college provides. If you don't know this, all colleges provide I say all colleges provide meal plans for students. That means you pay a certain amount. You can eat on campus at their cafeterias, places that they have to eat, and you don't have to worry about cooking or eating in your dorm room or at home. You want to look and make sure that that is economical for you. Normally, we tell students do not pay for 3 meals a day every day on a college campus. You're not going to eat 3 meals every day on college campus. And you're going, why? I have to eat 3 meals. Yes, you do. But a lot of times you're not going to get up for breakfast. You're going to want to go out and eat in the evening with friends. You're going to want to just snack at lunch and not eat eat out of the meal plan. So if you're not going to do that, don't pay for it because it's very expensive, the meal plans are. And you want to see your budget. You know how you eat. Maybe it is more cost effective for you if you're living off campus to eat at your apartment. Maybe that's a smarter thing for you to do. You want to think about couponing, use apps that allow free food. I know I have my Chick-fil-A one because my granddaughter wants to eat at Chick-fil-A all the time, and we get deals and better prices on the app for Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, etc. You can get pretty good deals. You can actually eat on some of those deals that they have. Look at weekly sales if you're buying groceries or discount retailers like Costco, etc., or other places buy for less whenever you're looking to buy groceries. Consider generic brands if you're buying groceries. I watched another special last night that a lot of generic or store brands are the same companies that produce the brand name things like Libby or whatever other brands that you buy in the store. They're made by the same company. You might want to split entrees with friends. Always take your leftovers home. A lot of people do that now. They say, I'm going to take my leftover. This is my lunch for tomorrow. Can save a ton of money. Eating out is just expensive these days. It's very expensive. It's difficult to eat out for less than $10 to $20 these days, no matter where you go. So it's expensive. So can always take your leftovers so you can eat those when you get home. And look at special deals, buy one, get one. I know a lot of people that do that. They'll go buy one, get one, and then eat the other one that night for supper. So plan your food well. It's getting more expensive to eat these days. And I noticed in the news that food is getting higher again. It's getting more expensive again. So if it doesn't go down by the time you get in college, it's going to be important that you budget for this. See how much time I have left. Okay. Textbooks and supplies. Textbooks are a big ticket item. They can cost $1,200 to $1,600 to buy your textbooks, and you want to make sure that you're smart when you're doing this. Do your research, borrow books from friends, find out if they took the same class, friends took the same classes as you, and see if you can use their book. Check out the library options. If it's a popular class or a class that they offer every semester, sometimes they'll have 4 or 5 copies of that textbook in the library, and you can check it out on an ongoing basis and use that. You can rent textbooks now, which is a very smart option. Buy used online or from a bookstore. Used books they're definitely less than half when you buy used books online. My twin tells a story of her daughter buying a Vietnam culture book. She wanted to take that class because her dad was a professor who taught a class on the Vietnam War. She bought the book brand new for $185. We sold that book on our eBay store last semester for $28. So she spent $125, and a guy in Indiana bought it for $20-something. You can do that too. Compare prices, see which books are more on different sites. You don't have to buy all of them from the same site if you're buying used. And if you're having to buy other things, some colleges use Scantron sheets to take tests on. Sometimes buying those in bulk can save you money. What you don't want to do is line up at the campus bookstore on the first day of class with all the other freshmen and buy brand new books from the bookstore. It just does not make sense to do that. Make sure that you're being smart about paying that money for books. Internet, if you live off campus, you're going to have internet. Be sure and do your research on pricing that out. See how much it's going to cost. Do you really need it? Can you just use your phone hotspot? Can you just use your phone while you're at home when you need to do a little bit of research? Can you always utilize the school Wi-Fi instead of buying internet at your apartment? You can try libraries, coffee shops, the places you can get free Wi-Fi. Just be careful that you're not using that in an unsecured environment. If you're using Starbucks Wi-Fi, do not do any don't pull up your finance app to do when you're on public Wi-Fi. Just do the work that you need to do, because a lot of times those places are compromised. People are looking for someone checking their banking statement while they're at Starbucks. So be careful doing that. Entertainment, we saw a while ago that can be up to 30% of your budget, and everybody likes to have fun. You're going to do that in college too. Budget for it, but just make sure that you don't go in the red like that one app we saw where somebody had already overspent on entertainment, because it's easy to do in college. Oh, everybody's going to go out and eat. Oh, we're all going to go out and go dance. Everybody's going to go to the football game. You have to be careful, because it's going to be tempting to do that. Make sure that you stay within your budget. Find free or low-cost activities. If you're on a college campus, they're going to have them. They're going to have free things for you to do. They want you to stay on campus, be safe, join the community. They're going to have things for you to do. So check them out and look at local things to do. If you're going to a new place, look at their hiking trails and their parks and their local festivals and see where you can go have fun without spending a lot of money. College dorm room, furnishing it and decorating it. The amount of money that some students spend doing that, it can really hurt their budget. Be careful especially if you're going to a dorm or going into a new apartment, that you're not overspending. You're not going to be there forever. You want to be comfortable, but you don't need to go crazy and spend a ton of money. Okay, so check out your garage sales, thrift stores, classified ads, resale apps, online marketplaces. I often buy things on Facebook Marketplace or on eBay, other places. There's a place that we go called The Occasional Sale that's open once a month, where you can find really cool stuff to decorate with that doesn't cost a lot of money. So think about that now, instead of going down to Walmart or Target, buying everything bulk and spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Think it out. Make sure that you're being careful, because that money that you spend on that can help you make it through college on somewhere else where you need food or gas. Buying clothes, same thing. Check thrift shops. It's very rare that I buy new clothes these days, as I opened my eBay resale business and we're started looking at retro clothing. I know that's really big with young people now. Finding new clothes with new tags still on and finding better clothes than I probably could have afforded is so much fun. I have a great time doing it, and you can too. There's no reason for you to bust your budget buying new clothes whenever you can be frugal and still be fashionable. So check those things out. I'm sure you've heard of Mercari, Poshmark. I know there's some cooler ones that young people know about too, that you can find clothes at. So one of the things that we've started talking to college students about, and counselors who help college students, that we didn't in the past, was for students to check and see if they qualify for benefits from DHS. If a student qualifies for benefits like SNAP benefits while they're at home, they could be more likely to qualify for that in college. And you want to check. Once you get out on your own, you get to college, go to OKDHS and see if you qualify for food benefits. And even if you've never qualified before, check and see if you do. That's a great benefit. It will save you money. It's not bad to do that. You're going to be paying taxes when you graduate from college for the rest of your life. That's what this is for, to help people who are trying to do better. So check and see if you do, see if you qualify for SNAP benefits or for housing benefits like rental or utility assistance at DHS also. I've had several friends who had help renting places from DHS once they got to college. You can also check food pantries in Oklahoma. One of the things that is new the last 4 or 5 years is that there are college students who have food insufficiency. They're not eating enough. And it's because things are more expensive now. I didn't have to worry about that when I was in college. A lot of college students now do have to worry about that because things are more expensive. So don't go hungry. Check your food banks and check your college food bank. Many colleges have food banks right at the college now. They'll have toiletry items, food items, etc. And you just need to check with if nothing else, check with the financial aid department, if that's who you're familiar with at the college, and see if they have one. Look at the resources page from your college and you'll see if they have one. But you can also check the regionalfoodbank.org or the food bank here that we have the link for in Tulsa. And there is a resource called 211 Oklahoma. This one says Tulsa, but just look up 211 Oklahoma and it's all across the state, and they can help you with other assistance like rental and utility and assistance, or help you find other assistance if you need it. Someone mentioned to me right before I started this presentation that a lot of colleges now have clothing closets too. So if you're having trouble or you need clothing, check your college for that too. A lot of benefits. So here are those final takeaways that I talked about. We were I was at Oklahoma, OSU, OKC Tech, and an adult student in college reminded me when we were talking about saving money that he had no idea he could get so many discounts and free things from using his college ID. He was so happy. This was an adult man. He was probably in his 40s. And he said he had saved so much money going to restaurants, to different like Prime membership, Amazon Prime membership. I think it's half of what it is for people who aren't college students. There's a lot of things you can get for free using your college email or using your college ID. So always check any place you go out to eat, any place that you go buy anything, see if you can get a discount or get it free. They want to help you. That's why we want people to graduate from college. That's what everybody wants. It helps everybody when that happens. So let them help you. Complete your FAFSA every semester. We are still surprised at the number of college students who don't realize it's not just high school seniors who can complete the FAFSA. You can complete it every time you go, every year that you're in college. Get grants, get help when you need it, get student loans if you need it. Don't forget to do that. Continue applying for scholarships. A lot of high school students apply for scholarships and they quit when they get to college. They have scholarships for college students too. So be sure that you keep doing that, and don't forget that you can still get money to help you through college with scholarships. Borrow smart. If you have to get a student loan, do it be smart when you do it. Be smart with the money that you do decide to take. Don't take more than you need. I have a link at the end here that from Ready, Set, Repay, our partner here at OCAP, who helps with student loans and talks about student loans and how to manage those carefully. And it will tell you how to do that. So I have a link for that on that page that I told you about. Like I said, most college students work, so consider working for an employer who helps with tuition assistance. Sometimes they do other things than tuition assistance, but that's the most common one. It's surprising, every time I go to high school and college campuses now, I almost always have at least one student who says they started working for a certain employer because they were going to help pay for their college education. That might be an option for you. We have a link at the end from the Oklahoma State Regents of Higher Education with links to employers in Oklahoma who may help with that. It's not the complete list. There are other employers that aren't on that list at the state of Oklahoma's website that will help also. I know you've heard of Walmart, McDonald's, Starbucks. There's quite a few places that most people know now that if you're working for them and you meet certain conditions, they will help pay college costs. So check with your employer, and if you're going to get a job, maybe that's something to think about. Maybe that's what you want to do. Find an employer who will help you. And again, save, save, save. I mentioned that before, that you were going to get tired of hearing that, but save money when you can, so that if an emergency happens, if things start costing more than you expected, that you have a cushion. You have something to fall back on. All right, let's take a look at, does anybody have questions? Let me look up here in chat. I saw some questions up here. Let me look at those. There will be a recording. Thank you for putting that 211 up there. My partner, whoever that was, that 211 link that I talked about is there. Does anybody have any other questions that they want to put in chat before I go to the link page? Oh, great. So Lydia Gonzalez said that TCC, Tulsa Community College, allows for students to borrow devices and hotspots. That's awesome. That's a good, I'm going to add that one, Lydia, to my extra tips page and look and see what other colleges do that. That might be something more colleges are doing too. Because that's another emergency that can happen. Maybe your computer breaks or something. That would be a tough one. Anybody else? Okay, let's go to this last links page because it does have tons of things that, especially if you're a college student or a college a counselor helping college students or another staff member, these links are so helpful. That college discount ones, that when I told you about that man who talked about his college discounts, I found a website that had 75 listed, but I'm sure that's not all 75. I'm sure there's thousands of them. So be sure and do that. That's like my AAA now. I use my AAA and my, what's the other one for when you're retirement age anyway? I use that, my old lady discounts all the time. I always say, do you have a elderly or an old person discount? I always do that. So be sure and check wherever you go. We have a Oklahoma Money Matters Make It Count webinar. We have these that you're at right now, the third Tuesday of each month, and oftentimes it's information that's helpful for current college students or students who are going to college and adults who are working with them. So be sure and check those out. You'll get an email now if you're in this one. Our website has more information about everything that I've talked about. The Your Money's Matters Guide is ours, and it is for college students. Again, it goes in, if you like reading something, it has more information about everything that I talked about. We have some podcasts, that cash envelope. Print that you can print. We have a link for that. That Excel simple budget template that I talked about, I have that particular one linked right there. But like I say, if you go into Microsoft Excel, it will have others. The employer tuition assistance in Oklahoma, I have that link listing all of those employers that have asked to be on our list. Like I say, there's more, but these are the ones who have asked to be on this Oklahoma State Regions for Higher Education list. There is OK College Start. They have a webpage called Work While You Learn, and it talks about federal work study, which is my next link, talks about part-time work. I think AmeriCorps they have on there, and some other information about working while you're in college. I didn't talk a lot about federal work study, but when you complete your FAFSA, your results will tell you if you qualify for federal work study. That's money that the federal government has set aside to pay student employees on the college campus. That's what that is, and you can qualify to get that money. And you'll see that on your FAFSA when you complete it. We talked about scholarships. I have 2 links there, OK College Start and You Can Go Too. Both of them have great information on scholarships, how to apply for them. One of them will send you scholarships that you qualify for if you fill out a little questionnaire for them. So a lot of information on how to do that and how to organize. I have our OKMM budgeting page and our budgeting tool, that calculator that I showed you at the beginning, the Amazon textbook rental and used book site. There's also another big rental website called Chegg Textbook Rental, but there are other places. These are 2 that a lot of people use. And then that student loan Borrow Smart from the Start link that I was talking about. So check all those out. If I said something that kind of went over your head, you want to go back and look at it, these are all links that you can use. If there's something here, not here, that you want to know more about, feel free to ask in chat or hang around when we're through, or send me an email, and I'll be glad to answer those questions for you. And I'm going to go back to the beginning there because I forgot to put my email back up there again on another link. So let me get that back to that first one so you can see my email if you want to write down. It's sfalk@ocap.org. So if you want to email and ask me a question, please feel free to do that. Let me check and make sure we don't have any questions. Yes, I will be sending out a recording of this recording that we're doing right now. And yes, I will send you a PDF of this presentation, Heather, and it will have that last link page. So you'll have all of those. Great. Well, thank you guys so much. I know that was a lot of information and I talked fast. So please send me questions if you have them. And I hope it was helpful. If you can think of anything else that would be a good tip or something for students to know to help them budget, make it through college with the money they've got, or any tips, be sure and send them to me. Great. Well, thank you so much. I'll close this meeting now and stop the recording. Thanks so much.